I am the president and CEO of the Philadelphia Youth Network, and I'm happy to join the Alliance members and share with you the work that we're preparing to execute this summer. We manage an initiative called Work Ready Philadelphia, which provides youth employment experiences to young people, and specifically those ages 12 to 24. And summer employment is a huge opportunity for us. And one of the things that drove us as an organization is that we saw young people losing out on a lot of things, right? Missing proms, graduations, ending school. And early in the crisis, I challenged our team that I didn't want to be another adult that was letting young people down. So I didn't want to take yet another thing away from them. And this is before many of my peers and friends had made the decision to either move forward with summer employment programs or end them. And so we began very early on, about week 3. We've been working remotely for 10 weeks now to ask ourselves, what could we do in order to not let young people down? How can we save summer jobs? And it was a bumpy road. I am not going to lie to you. We had spent 18 months before this point retooling our entire system. We were right in the middle of contracts with over 80 different nonprofit organizations. And it was really challenging because we had worked so hard to incorporate system diversity, add new partners to the table, increase youth wages, increase the reimbursement rate for our nonprofit organizations. And we saw all of that sort of crumple in a matter of hours. We knew that what we were planning was not going to happen. And that required us to do a couple of really important things. Introspective. So immediately I said to my team, we are in a talent over title moment. And that means that I appreciate what you were hired to do. That might not be what I'm asking you to do right now. And then we literally deployed our entire staff into Operation Save Summer Jobs. And that meant that if you were the office manager, you were now manning the hotline. If you were the lead program person, you had an arsenal of talent at your disposal that you could deploy to what you needed. If you were my executive director of executive strategy, you were now also the assistant contracts manager. And everybody rose to the occasion. And from that experience, we have decided to move forward with our summer jobs program. We will offer 3 virtual tracks to young people, and they will be compensated for completing the activities. And those 3 tracks are digital branding and identity, which is critical when they're required to sort of engage more online, engage differently outside of their peer groups. And so we thought that that was a really important skill set for young people to attain this summer. Financial literacy, how to earn, keep, manage money. And that's an evergreen skill, right? We all can use a refresher there. And then thirdly, career exposure. So how can you identify, different careers that are interesting to you and explore them in a safe way, but in a productive way. And in addition to our digital offerings, which we're using a platform called Naviance, our nonprofit providers, we surveyed them really quickly. And we learned that 90% of them were ready to go if we were ready to go. And so we locked arm in arm. We looked at professional development. We looked at curriculum support. We thought about what does it take to deliver your content in a virtual setting. And they are going to enhance what we're offering with individual activities based on the organization. The process itself, it sounds really smooth in 5 minutes, but it was not really smooth. And so I do want to hit a couple of really important points. Number 1 is relationships. Coordination. If we did not have our ear to the ground, real relationships with people who were willing to tell us we were either crazy for thinking that we can move forward with this, irresponsible for moving forward with this, or hey, we are with you arm in arm. What do you need from me? We would not have been able to pull that off. And so having a real relationships with the folks who deliver services, but also the decision makers. So my funders were also in the midst of responding to all things COVID, making sure that young people have food, making sure that young people were in safe homes, making sure protecting housing. And so you can imagine summer jobs maybe on the list from 1 to 10, it's not on the list at all. But because I work really closely with the deputy mayor, who runs the Office of Children and Family Services, I was able to text her at night and say, hey, this is what I'm thinking. You think I'm crazy? Hey, when can you talk to me? And so we would talk on the weekend. She's like, is your Saturday okay? It sure is for you. But if we didn't have real relationship, I would not have been able to hear her concerns, financial constraints. She wouldn't have been able to be honest with me, and we wouldn't have been able to plan to move forward together. And the same is true for our workforce board. Lastly, I want to say adaptive thinking. Pivot is the name of the game these days, right? And as a parent, I've had to pivot, I had to rethink, digital exposure for my 10-year-old and monitoring for my 15-year-old. And as a CEO, I had to pivot. I had to think what's going to make my organization sustainable and what is work for the future going to look like and how are we going to be a part of it. And additionally, how do you bring everybody along? And so we shop the plan. We were like, this is what we're thinking. What do you think? And folks were really excited that we were even thinking to continue. Then it was like, this is how we're going to continue. What do you think? Oh my gosh, not only do you have a thought, you have a plan. And here's what we need from you. How can I help? Became the next part of that cry. And so coordinating partners is like data-driven process, a lot of communication, and a lot of checking in, and not necessarily permission, but really inviting people to join your vision and be a part of what you're doing. And lastly, shifting the program. It's easy to figure out what we can't do. That's the name of the game, right? We can't do this. We can't be together. We can't hug. There's a lot of can't do. I appreciate that. And what I asked my team to do was decrease the time in the can't space because we actually don't have a lot of time. We have to make some quick calls. I'm going to be transparent with the decisions that have to be made. Sometimes I'm going to ask you for your thoughts and other times I'm going to make them, and we're going to move forward. And what I actually need is not necessarily agreement. I need alignment. And so what is it going to take for you to align? And for us at PYN, that means what is it going to take for you to get on board with the call that was made, and how are you going to bring your best self so that we can achieve the outcome? So those are my practical, very quick tips for you to consider if you're in the decision-making stage is, adaptive thinking. Pivot is the name of the game. Coordinate with your partners, and also the people that don't like you too. Call them, get their thoughts. That's usually helpful in terms of strategizing. Shift your program if you can. Find the talent in your space that can help you rethink what you're doing, and then coordinate the plan and execute like crazy because our young people are depending on us to figure this out for them. So that's it for me.
Shakima, this is Brian. A quick question. How are the students responding?
The students, this has been an interesting challenge for us. So we just announced on May 5th very publicly, our mayor did a press release. And what we're seeing so far, so to give you a sense, we were at about 6,000 applications pre-mayor's announcement. And now we are over 10,000 applications. Every single day, young people are saying, I'm interested. This is something that I can do. I'd like to do this. And oh, by the way, you're going to compensate me for doing this. And so far, a positive response. I have to tell you, we did some piloting with digital experiences before this moment. So we have a little bit of insight. And one of the concerns that we have is about retention and completion. So the importance of the adult, the caring adult, checking in, motivating you, helping you find if you have any problems, how to resolve them. We think is going to be a critical difference maker because we've tried it with, hey, here's the link, here's the compensation, and we have not seen a great response for that. We're not totally surprised by that when we think about youth development. And that's something that we are hoping to really monitor closely this summer and learn some productive strategies for increasing engagement.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Shakima. And can you hear me, by the way?
I can hear you so much better now. I was so nervous before.
Yeah, and deepest apologies to folks for the beginning, but I want to take one of Shakima's points, and I had to pivot. So, Shakima, thank you for giving us that overview of what Philadelphia is doing, but really the approach that you leaned into and some of the strategies that you are using, and then also naming the resource that's helping you all think about remote work. And just to name that resource one more time, you said it was Naviance?
Naviance is the platform that we've chosen to use.
Perfect.
Our partners are also using things like Google Classroom. So there are lots out there. Loom is another one if you're working with younger kids out there. So there are lots of them out there, but our school district uses Naviance for college and career readiness. So we decided to support that effort as well here locally and enhance the use of that existing platform.
Perfect. And for all of our guests, we will be compiling a list of the resources and we'll send that out to you afterwards. Shakima, thank you so much for that overview. And next, we're going to go to Mayoshi, who will share a little bit about Genesis Works and how they're navigating the space specifically with employers and young people. Following Mayoshi, we will then hear from the resource that we wanted to highlight, Simba, and the CEO from there, Ava, and then we'll cut to our Q&A discussion piece. Those were the points that I was hitting on when you guys couldn't hear me in the beginning, so I just wanted to underscore just the flow and the agenda one more time. So with that, we are going to transition to Mayoshi.
Thanks, Nathaniel. Hi, everyone. I am thrilled to be part of this discussion about remote work strategies and share how we've adapted our program to support our students and bring them on and our internship host partners. So just quickly, Genesis Works is a national social enterprise that provides pathways to career success for high school students in underserved communities. We do this through professional and technical skills training, meaningful work experiences, and impactful relationships. Our mission was important before this crisis, but our work is even more critical now. We are right now redoubling our efforts to open doors to opportunity for young people whose road to economic success will be more difficult as a result of this pandemic. So when the world and the country transitioned to sheltering in place and remote work became the norm, our internship program that was running since September suddenly became virtual. We knew that we had to pivot our model and provide additional support to our young people and to prevent a disruption in service to our students and our host partners, our companies that we partner with. And I have to share that we're seeing results. I'm really excited to say this. It's been 3 months and our students remain successful in their internships. Our partners remain committed to providing impactful work experiences that they find valuable to their operations. So I just want to share one story because I always think they paint a really great picture. One of our current young interns, Jackson, is working in the IT department of a local university. Before COVID-19, he was providing help desk and tech support to the university staff in person. Today, this 17-year-old young man who's been working in this role for only 6 months, adjusting to his first office experience, moving to online schooling, he transitioned seamlessly to providing top-notch help desk and tech support to his university colleagues, doing it all remotely. In fact, he was recently singled out and praised for his great work during this transition by his manager's boss. So we're really excited about that. And so how do we do that? We supported him by being in constant contact with him and his supervisor. We provided him and his manager and all of our interns and their supervisors with a few tips to help facilitate this transition. And we think these are the things that will help support and provide support for the students. So as we moved to remote work, moving there highlighted the importance of the Zoom call. So for our students, we focused on, how they need to show up for those calls and how to continually present themselves professionally from their homes. So we're thinking, these are teens. We have to remind them no piles of laundry, no messy rooms in the background, try to minimize distractions. We encourage them to create their own quiet workspace. We also encourage them to be consistent with the company culture they've come to know, mirror the attire of their supervisors to help create a work mindset. We talked about developing a routine, starting the day at the same time, taking lunch breaks, stepping away from the screen at regular intervals. It was important to us that they knew that the workplace skills they learned in our training prepared for them for the in-person workplace also applies in a virtual workplace. So another impact that we realized in moving to a virtual work environment that we knew would reach our students and impact their relationship was their relationship building, or their ability to continue to develop those networks and contacts that they were building in their internships. As we all know, maintaining strong relationships and building those networks is key, and communicating effectively is key, are key factors to success. So as we moved to this virtual work, we continued focusing on that. We wanted to make sure that our students could continue building those relationships, and impressed upon them that they would have to make an extra effort to maintain them, to maintain the relationships they were building, and then to continue to build new ones. So what we did was we reminded them constantly to do everything that they learned in training: speak up, share ideas, ask questions, produce high quality work products. We also encourage our interns and our supervisors to have as many face-to-face interactions as possible with each other, and use any company's communication tools where they exchange messages, either messenger or chat. Use those functions to connect with your supervisors and others that you want to build relationships with. You know, we did all that because we recognized that we had to provide our students and remind them that the skills that we're providing them, that they learn for an in-person workplace, apply to the virtual workplace. Our world is changing, but our mission remains the same. We're adapting to ensure that our students are prepared with the right skills to navigate this new workplace. They're resilient and committed to working toward a better future. So my charge to you and all of you out there is that we continue to work together to try to continue and keep these opportunities open for all of our students. So that's how we are preparing our students and ensuring that they can remain successful in their internships.
Awesome. Thank you for that, Mayoshi. And then I also wanted to follow up and share with folks that in the chat box, please continue to drop in any questions as they pop up. Love what's happening. And then also, Shakima, thank you for responding to one of those questions in real time as well. To go back to Mayoshi, I'm sorry. When you were talking about the way in which you all are navigating this time and the tips that were provided to young people who are navigating their remote work experience, how are your employer partners navigating this time, and were there any tips that your team or you have to provide to them to support young people throughout this remote experience?
Absolutely. Our model that we have is really a partnership. It's with our team, with our students, and our team with our program coordinators, with our supervisors, and we work to bring them all together. So as we're advising our students on how they can continue to show up professionally and continue to be valuable in their companies, we were also advising and consulting with their supervisors and encouraging them to continue to engage with our students, advising them and recommending that they have at least weekly face-to-face meetings on screen with their students. We also helped them build professional development work plans that would help outline the deliverables that are needed so that the students be able to keep on track. We knew that with this virtual environment, the supervisor would lose the benefit of sort of those one-off check-ins. And so we created this whole work plan where the student would create it from what they understood and check in with their manager to make sure they were on the same page about what their project needs were and when they were due. So encouraging the supervisors to develop those work plans with the student, to have review meetings weekly, and then to check in with them a couple of times a week in person on visually as opposed to just on phone and by email, is something that we encourage them to do. And they have found that it's been very, very beneficial. So sometimes what we realize is that some of the counseling we do with our managers, they employ outside of the internship. And one of our managers actually shared that some of the advice that we gave them, they use with others on their team.
Wow. Awesome. All right. So we want to quickly transition to a resource highlight. But before we do so, I want to give a special just thanks and appreciation to both Mayoshi and Shakima for sharing the perspective and providing insights as Alliance members. We are going to bring you all back during the Q&A/discussion at the end of this because we have some questions coming in really directed towards some of the program things and strategies that you all are using. So I want to thank you both again for representing the Alliance and providing some insights to our members. Now we are going to shift to the resource highlight that we wanted to offer. In this time of navigating remote work and thinking about just the different ways to approach it, both Shakima and Mayoshi shared different resources that their respective organizations and partners are using. We wanted to be able to also bring a resource to this group for your consideration in case it might help the way in which you are supporting young people or employers during this time of remote work. With that, I'm happy to introduce Ava, who is the CEO of Simba. And Ava will share more about her personal story in connection to this work and how Simba is supporting companies and young people across this country. Ava?
Thank you so much, Nathaniel. I'm so honored to be here on this call, and thank you especially to Shakima and Mayoshi for sharing your insights and working with employers. Before I begin, I wanted to share that this is such a critical time. As crisis and challenges face, it's important for organizations to show leadership and adapt and be innovative. And I think that this call and the group of people organizing it is a testament to showing leadership right now. And students are looking to you, and I'm really, really fortunate to be a part of this conversation today. When we started out Simba, we had this crazy idea that any student should be able to open up their laptop and intern for their dream company. My background is not in tech. I studied human rights and social impact, and I was in school in Tucson, Arizona. All the internships I wanted were unpaid and based in Washington, D.C. And as you might imagine, that closed many doors for me. When I was a junior, I landed a dream opportunity. The U.S. Department of State launched a remote internship program. And so throughout the entire year, from August to May, I worked remotely for the Human Rights Bureau from my dorm room in Tucson, Arizona. And this changed the landscape of opportunities for me. Soon after, I did 6 remote internships, interning for the Human Rights Council, different bureaus at State Department. And I realized the power of remote work to create accessibility for myself and my fellow classmates that I encouraged to do remote internships. After I did my graduate studies, I was a fellow with Congressman John Lewis, and I created Simba as my action project. It was actually one of the first action projects that came out of the fellowship that was not a nonprofit. And our mission with Simba was to connect students with remote internship opportunities. And when we got started, we didn't create a matchmaking site. What we did was we created a platform to streamline remote internship experiences. So on Simba's platform, we have an onboarding feature, we have a project management feature, a place to gather feedback, and our favorite feature, a place for all the interns and managers and mentors to engage in one place. When we first did our pilot, we launched with the U.S. Department of State with 2,000 virtual interns. So I always like to say the federal government is running the world's largest remote internship program. It is possible. They bring on thousands of mentors, they design and curate projects, and it is a win-win experience. And that's why our team came up with the name Simba for symbiotic relationships. At this time, we've really stepped up to support a lot of employers and students with opportunities. We launched a campaign to #SaveInternships, where we're providing complete discounted fees for nonprofits to be able to use the platform on Simba. NACE recently did a quick poll indicating that over 80% of internship programs are changing this summer, and around 40% of them are moving to a virtual format. So we are trying to provide a lot of best practices and insights around remote internships. On our blog on Simba, we have a lot of great tools and resources. We even hosted a webinar with the U.S. Department of State on all the best practices with remote internships. And I wanted to share that I know a lot of us are talking about how we are adapting and pivoting. I also like to have everyone keep in mind that remote internships are fundamentally different than in-person internships. You should change your mindset and think about remote internships as a new way of learning and preparing for the future of work. A lot of us might be new to remote work, and so remote work is very different than in-person work. So showing up online, having professionalism in your communication online is all important skills for students. So I argue that students should have an experience of both in-person and remote opportunities. And it's also really great for the employers because now they can access an expansive talent pool of students that are beyond just their city. So we are really excited about the power of remote internships to create diversity and include more students with opportunities. A lot of the teams we're working with right now have shared that in the future, they're able to scale their programs. For example, the Poster House, they typically run an internship program of 2 students, and now they're scaling their program to almost 5 students because they said we did not have to worry about desk space or the cost of relocating them. Although we do like to say at Simba, all internships should be paid and all interns on Simba are paid. That is woven into every single one of our contracts. We even have a fund where we help nonprofits pay for their interns. And so I'd love to leave everyone with kind of 3 key pieces of advice that we've gathered from Simba. We've worked with designing over 5,000 internship experiences to date, helping both remote and in-person experiences. And the number one thing is organize, plan, and structure your program. Before your interns come on site, think of your calendar and understand how do you want to organize the plan. Try to weave in a cadence of lunch and learns, seminars, and invite people and guest speakers to chime on in remote for a remote webinar to get feedback. Typically, internship programs will get feedback mid-program and end of program. Now that we're all experimenting with remote internships, it's critical that you get feedback on demand. And so we say at least once a week. In my second remote internship, I was ghosted by my manager. And it can happen to interns because they're not in sight and they can, sometimes managers get overwhelmed and busy. So ask your managers to curate the projects before the interns come on board. And then embrace it. This is going to be a learning experience for everyone. We're all pivoting. Students have been taking classes online. That's a new experience. And they're ready to embrace this new type of world and are grateful for the opportunity of a remote internship this summer. So wanted to say we really commend the efforts here. I'm happy to follow up afterwards for anyone who would like to learn a little bit about Simba and the platform and how we can support. But again, thank you so much for your leadership and supporting internship programs this summer.
Thank you so much, Ava. Really appreciate that. And, I want to thank you for sharing a little bit about your story and then also how that is fueling the work of Simba and the work of your team. For a lot of us that are a part of this call, this work is personal for us. Many of us that are supporting young people and working in partnership with young people around employment can point to a moment in time when our employment experience was transformational, transformative, and impactful. And when we are drawing from that personal energy to do this work and work in partnership with young people, part of the heart here at America's Promise is how can we create these spaces to dialogue when we encounter times such as this. And for us, to name it once more, we wanted this conversation and discussion to be one where strategies are offered, different approaches are offered, and from each of our speakers thus far, the resources that they reference, once again, we will send in an email so that you have access to all of this. And at this point, with the next about 10, 15 minutes, we want to open it up for dialogue and the questions that you all have. Love the energy and the interaction that's happening in the chat. And for those of you who have not put your questions in the chat, we want to provide a space for you to do one of 2 things. The first, if you have a question for Shakima, Mayoshi, or Ava, please put that question and direct it to one of them so that we can give you access to be able to engage. And then the second is, if you are navigating the space and you have some pretty cool resources or strategies that you want to share with a larger group, we want to encourage you to do that as well. So at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Fido, who will really help facilitate this discussion part of the agenda.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining. I posted a message in the chat box asking everyone to drop in any questions that they may have for this session or this section of today's agenda. But I wanted to start off with Isha, who I knew had a question ready to go.
Are you finding more, this is Brian from Bill, thank you. Are you finding more companies stepping up in this environment and knocking on your doors, asking for help on figuring this out? And that could go to any one of you.
I can answer that. We work with a diverse set of employers locally to support our internship funding, and we've seen a variety of responses, most of which have been, we are really happy that you are continuing to do this. We are not as confident in our ability to host an intern in person. We are interested in virtual internships. Is that an option? And or we want to still support the efforts. And given that you have a plan to offer digital, we will continue to invest in you. And so most of our employers have signed on, have made financial commitments, and even made other resources available to us. A quick example, Bank of America is one of our larger supporters, and they are a part of something called the Satel Institute. They answered the Satel Institute's challenge, which got us 20 additional $1,000. And so we've seen responses like that. Our Pico, which is our electric company, major supporter, was really, really excited about having in person, realized that that wasn't going to work out for them. Didn't say, hey, we're just not going to do anything. They said, not only are we going to step up, we're going to step up and fund you all. We want to also fund some additional slots this year. Our smaller businesses, it's been a little bit up and down. And to be honest, we expected that. So we are experiencing less revenue than we would typically get from our fee-for-service work with employers. But by and large, it has been an overwhelmingly positive response from the business community.
I can share from our perspective. We're seeing mixed results. We're seeing in this region more interest in understanding what it could look like. So the fact that we've done it so far has given us insights into how it will look, and we have stories that we can share. We have other companies, as we're seeking new partners, we have references that we can talk to, and we can have them share. This is how the internship worked. When we pivoted to virtual, these are the things that we put in place that is making our current internship successful. So in my conversations with new companies that are interested in that are sort of interested in hosting internships, their hesitation is just understanding, and what we're doing is helping them understand what that can look like.
I would like to quickly chime in on Simba. We've always been very passionate about remote internships, and it wasn't easy to pitch this to companies. Oftentimes they were like, remote internships would never happen. We'll never, they'll always be in person. And now the same teams who are, sharing that, we're not going to use Simba this summer, have come back to us asking, can we use Simba today? How can we get Simba tomorrow? And so our typical, interaction with a customer was typically 3 to 6 months for an enterprise customer. Now we are having that setting up in like a matter of a week or 2 weeks. So it's a really critical time. And I think we've seen on our end that there is high demand for it as well.
Thank you, everyone. So we have a couple more questions, first from Luke and then Gurnell next. So Luke asked the question, given what we've been experiencing around issues with students who are not doing well with the digital transition / disengaging, 1, how have institutions designed opportunities to do your best to incorporate considerations for students who may not struggle with engagement? And 2, what types of data are you planning to collect to be able to continue to course correct towards equitable practices as these internships go live / progress? Did anyone want to take that question first?
I can answer a couple of them. So I think for us, one of the strategies that we're trying regarding engagement is really to train the adult professionals to both use the data and prepare to respond to the data. And so we have a dashboard of information that all of our subcontracts will have access to. And they are typically used to managing participation issues. I mean, newsflash, kids didn't go to work every day all summer long either. And so we do have a lot of data around what our expectations around retention and participation are, and then also equipping them with resources to support them in terms of encouraging young people to complete, understanding the challenges, and doing more outreach than they might be used to. And so that's some of the ways that we're trying to combat engagement. I think the other big piece is that jobs have typically been an hour. Summer jobs, typically you call anybody 120 plus hours, 6 weeks. So time has been a major factor in how you think about summer jobs. We have dismissed that notion. So we have a system that young people can complete on a device of their choice. So it could be a phone, it could be a tablet, it could be a computer, it could be a Chromebook, MacBook. It doesn't, whatever you have is what you can use. And number two, it's not about time, it's about effort. And we think that that's going to be a huge shift for young people. So it's not a punch in a clock, it's not showing up at 8 o'clock. It's really about self-discipline, an initiative, and then completing the activities. And so we are anticipating that we're going to need to do a little bit more work around planning and responsibility with young people, because they will earn proportional to their effort. And that is different. Sometimes grades are somewhat like that, depending on what kind of school the young person is. And so that will be a new concept for young people. In terms of data, we watch data heavily, mostly because we are also the employer of record. And so if you know anything about nonprofits, you're in the first quarter of a new fiscal year with no contracts executed, and you're spending millions of dollars. Typically, we spend about $6 million in a summer. So 6 weeks, $6 million walks out the door, and that is a huge burden, a source of stress for me as a leader. So we will be watching very closely completion metrics. We watch our application metrics, enrollment metrics. We will also be looking at time to complete, because we don't have a lot of baseline data around this model that we're using this summer. And we also are going to be collecting information from our provider networks about the types of how prepared they were to implement virtual experiences, what additional supports they would need in training. And we do have a team of folks on a professional learning and development that is really working to tailor their approach to each provider, because everyone is unique. So that's how we're addressing some of those things.
I'd love to share a little bit about the engagement part of your question. That is something that is really what we like to say in Genesis Works is our secret sauce, in that we create a high touch program because our belief is that we have to provide our students with the skills they need to be successful in the workplace. So the new workplace is now virtual, which means that there are new skills students have to develop. They have to be able to engage, to your point, engage and continue to stay engaged in a digital format without a presence of someone in their face and watching them. So what we've done is, as we pivoted, it was interesting because we could see the difference in how students adjusted, how our young interns adjusted to the pivot from in-person internships to virtual. And there were some students who had some challenges. And so what we realized that we had to do was employ a little more hands-on with them. We started with, I think I mentioned earlier about the whole idea of a structured plan. So our normal model, we interact with our students once a week, perhaps. We started talking to them and communicating with them daily to ensure that they would be able to, so we could understand what their challenges were and work through them with them. So developing structured reporting processes is something that helped keep our students engaged, and how to help transition them when they move their work from in-person to digital. And what we're doing is continuing to assess and see how this is impacting our students. Because right now we're going into our training program where we spend 8 weeks taking a different cohort of students and training them on how to work in the workplace. And so what we've learned from the current cohort is that for our training, what we have to make sure we do for them is to incorporate live elements. We incorporate distance learning. We incorporate more engagement opportunities, more teaming type of experiences, so that we can ensure that they're able to stay the course and stay on track. So those are some of the things that we do in terms of focusing on the students to ensure that they are able to stay engaged with this new space.
I can chime in, and I saw some other questions pop in. I'll kind of put them into one a little bit. We have a question from Brandon around the technology sector and other spaces. And this is where I get excited because we are even working with museums this summer to take their internship programs remote, and a few other spaces. I think that one of the challenging spaces to take remote are the medical space or physical therapy, things that are very, very much in person. But almost all aspects of work have some element that can be done remotely. So we really encourage teams, as Mayoshi and Shakima said, to get creative. You can even poll your students. At Simba, we're going to be monitoring fun activities that companies are doing that are exciting for interns, and think outside the box. You get creative, poll the students what ideas you have, and you'll be surprised. They'll work on some cool projects, and they'll even collaborate together. We've seen that at Simba. We also have this notion at Simba called the and one. So we encourage interns to create a project that they're passionate about, whether it's volunteering on an initiative with a nonprofit or an outside project or learning a new instrument, just so that the intern is also growing in the experience beyond just the workplace deliverables. And then for the number of hours, I also would add just quickly to that, don't make it a 40-hour-a-week internship because it is overwhelming. When I did my internships, they were anywhere from 10 to 20 hours a week remotely, and make sure that you block off time with the intern to understand when they are working. And if your company is based on the East Coast, make sure that the intern who might be on the West Coast understands the time zones and when they should be present. I'm happy to share with you all, but we have an internship code of conduct and norms that's really helpful for students as they become remote, like what to expect. If you're using Slack, does my green light need to be on? If they get an email on a Saturday, they're at home, home is also work. Do they need to respond? So it's really important to set that expectation for the students as well.
Thank you. Next, I'm gonna move on to Mahalia's question. So Mahalia asked, what supports do you all have in place for youth identified as wanting to participate in the virtual internships? However, they are without the needed technology at home.
I can take that. So when we pivoted to virtual internships, we created an assessment. We looked at whether the student had computer, whether they had bandwidth, Wi-Fi, whatever it was, what tools they had, whether they had a space in their home that they could create that would be their own, a quiet workspace. And so when we understood each of their situations, we were able to provide support. So we provided them with the computers. We have a partner with AT&T to ensure that they were going to be able to provide any type of Wi-Fi and services they needed. We also, in a couple of cases, provided like a little TV table for some of the students so they could create their own space in their home that they could call their own. So I think it's important to really understand, to have a conversation with each student and walk them through what a day would look like and what they need to be successful in a virtual work day. And then once you understand that, assess that and identify those tools. And so for us, we have lots of partners around the region that help provide support as necessary.
And with Simba, we've partnered with Pay Our Interns, a nonprofit, and we've created an internship opportunity fund where we're able to take a portion of all of our revenue at Simba and help students who do not have access to laptops or materials to do internships. It's really important that they do have access. And when we talk to our partners about setting up their program, we do a run through and a checklist with them to make sure they're all set up for it as well.
So at the Philadelphia Youth Network, this is pretty new for us, and I'm really excited about the resources that my colleagues just shared. One of the things that we were fortunate to have is an anonymous donation to establish a youth fund for basic needs and for emergency needs. And that is something that we are looking to pair with those young people who identify that they have some challenges. We do have a pot of resources that are designated specifically for opportunity youth. We also have a partnership with Comcast And they invested in us about a year ago to increase digital literacy and access with young people. And so we've been utilizing those resources to address that particular issue. And then thirdly, we are partnering with our school district. One of the major concerns that we had was the device of your choice. And we know from our application data that many young people access our application through a phone. And so that was critical for us. But also our district distributed Chromebooks to many houses, like many school districts have done in the country. And we were concerned that they would have to return them at the end of the school year. And what we have brokered through a partnership with the school district is that the only group of students that will have to return them are seniors, and they have to return them to get their diploma. So that helped us a lot with access, because young people will be able to retain the device that they've been given. And that's something that we've done.
Thank you, Shakima. So it looks like we have one last question, which is from Janelle. She was able to type it in. She said that her question is, how have employers been responding to internship content? In her experience, when going to virtual, the content becomes more focused on professional development. How have you all been able to help employers create content in the virtual space?
That's a great question, and it's not easy because you have to think about what can be done virtually. And so that was actually one of the biggest hurdles when we were creating Simba, and understanding the projects and the tasks that the students could do that can be autonomous but also very meaningful. So we actually have project cards on our platform, and we really encourage mentors and managers to journal tasks that they do that would be insightful, or they could easily have an intern support them on in their day-to-day, and then think about how they can design that into a task, whether it be a marketing project or a research project. And then it's really important to have templates or examples of when the project is completed, this is what it should look like. So the more thoughtful you can be about the projects, the more successful the intern will be during the project and their performance. So we really encourage you to focus on designing these projects before the interns come on site.
Awesome. Thank you all so much for the insights and responses. And then for our guests, thank you for the robust questions that you all sent our way. As we begin to wrap up, we want to name a few things. Every resource, once again, will be shared in a follow-up email. But there were some themes that came up that we want to underscore, and some pieces that we weren't able to dive in that we want to recognize. Young people are not navigating one singular experience. A lot of young people have to navigate numerous factors when we think about working at home, and the way in which we talk about remote work. Home can look very different for the young people that we're serving across this country. When we think about foster youth, youth in transition, and then even for young people who are in a home environment, depending on what is going on in the house, can provide distractions and obstacles to getting the work done. So with that, we want to recognize that this conversation is an ongoing conversation, but the strategies that our guests provided and you all offered and identified throughout the chat are ways for us to continue this work. And so with that, we also want to underscore one other piece. When we are reaching out to employers to make the case for remote work for young people, as the connector or as the broker in the relationship that a lot of our organizations play, we have to outline exactly what the employer should do and what this remote experience should look like. And our guest speaker has really touched on that, and we appreciate you all giving different ways in which you have encouraged and also demonstrated the way to outline that experience for employers so that they can digest and really receive how to bring on a young person during this time of remote work. And then also the power of relationships. It is essential that relationships are the thing that we look to. How do we lean on one another? How do we remain transparent during this time and recognize what we are able to answer and the things that we are not able to answer? And for the things that we can't answer, we have a community to be able to lean on to move things forward. So with that, we want to thank each and every one of you for logging in today, carving out some time to think more about how to create intentional, meaningful remote experiences for young people, especially as we think about this time of summer work and how summer work is not lost. And everyone on this call is fighting to make sure summer experiences continue. So with that, thank you, thank you, thank you. We will share this recording with our networks. And once again, a special thanks to Shakima, Mayoshi, and Alba for providing so many insights, strategies, and approaches. Have a great day, everyone.